Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Infinite Omega, with me, Black Deatha. Today, I just wanted to talk a little about Spider-Man Far From Home, the 23rd movie of the MCU, and the movie ending Phase 3. Having just seen it, I thought I'd give a bit of a review breakdown, though this will not be nearly as long as my Endgame review, as that took way longer to make than I ever intended. Spoiler-free impressions? I liked it. Tom Holland continues to prove he was an amazing choice to play Spider-Man, and Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio is also great. The action is well shot, and the story was enjoyable. A good number of the cast from Homecoming return as well, with the movie expanding on Peter and MJ's relationship. So overall, as I said, I liked it, and I would recommend checking it out. Now, from this point on, I'm going to go more in depth, so please be advised, spoiler warning from here on out. Also, if you do enjoy this video, please do leave a like down below, and subscribe if you haven't already, as your support means a lot. Once again, to avoid any issues with copyright, most of the footage you're going to see is clips from Marvel's Spider-Man, but there will be some footage from the MCU here and there. The movie opens about 8 months after the end of Endgame, and this is the first time we get to see the world dealing with the aftermath of half the population suddenly popping back into existence. They seem to have dubbed it the Blip, and we see footage of people appearing out of the blue during a public event due to Hulk's snap, right in the very spot they disappeared from. This of course begs the question, what about the people who were flying on a plane during the decimation? The movie doesn't really answer this. One would assume Hulk snapped them all back to wherever was safe. Either way, the movie doesn't really go too far out of its way to really get into the broader ramifications of all this, but I also didn't really expect it to. This movie, like Homecoming, has a much more lighthearted tone than that of Endgame. The world is also shown to be mourning the loss of the fallen heroes, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, who everyone thinks is dead, as well as Natasha Romanoff and Vision. We also see a change in Peter. Unlike in Homecoming, where he was eager to be a hero, to be an Avenger, now he's less sure of himself, in part due to the loss of his mentor and somewhat father figure, Tony Stark. While out as Spider-Man, we see him asked by a crowd if he'll be the next Tony Stark, if he will now lead the Avengers. All of this overwhelms him, and he says he has to go. He just wants to run away from it all, and this is what he intends to do, at least for a little while, on his school summer trip to Europe. He intends to leave the Spidey suit behind, and just go and be a teenager, with the hopes of wooing MJ. His Aunt May, who knows he is Spider-Man since the end of Homecoming, thinks he should bring the suit, however, just in case. Happy Hogan shows up informing him that Nick Fury wants to talk to him, but even this Peter evades. We also learn that Aunt May has named his Spidey sense the Peter Tingle, a name that Peter is not fond of. Upon arriving in Europe, he finds that his Aunt May has gone ahead and added his Spidey suit to his luggage without him knowing. The trip's first destination is in Venice. Upon arrival, they check in at a rundown hotel. Following this, his class head out to take in the sights. Peter's friend Ned now has a girlfriend from their class. Apparently, the relationship started following the flight in. Peter goes off to buy MJ a gift, and Flash gets punched in the dick for some reason. Just as everything seems to be going well, the city is suddenly attacked by some sort of elemental water monster. Peter realizes he needs to act, but he has left his suit in the hotel. Telling Ned to lead people out of the area, he tries to help while avoiding being seen. He makes his way over to a canal crossing, helping more people when he can, and trying to figure out how to deal with this new threat. When trying to fight against it, he's knocked down. It's here that a mysterious, masked hero shows up and starts to fight off the monster. Peter continues to help from behind the scenes, trying to mitigate the damage being done to the city, though, as he sees the masked newcomer seems to have things in hand, he just leaves the fighting to him. The mysterious hero, having defeated the monster, flies off. Later that night, Nick Fury pays Peter a visit, irritated that Peter's been evading him. Fury tells him he needs his help, so Peter agrees and goes with him. On the way, Nick gives Peter something Tony Stark left for him, a pair of sunglasses, very much like the ones Tony wore in Civil War. When he puts them on, an AI system comes active named Edith. It's explained the name Edith means, even dead, I'm the hero. I liked this, a great nod to Tony's ego. This system will grant Peter total access to intelligence backdoors the world over and to Stark defense tech. Fury tells him that Tony trusted Peter to do what was right. When they finally arrive at Fury's base of operations, Peter formally meets Quentin Beck, the man who fought off the water monster, who Peter refers to as Mysterio, a name he and his friends came up with earlier. Quentin explains that he has come from another version of Earth, through the multiverse. His Earth was destroyed by these elemental creatures, and somehow he was able to make it to our Earth. Now, after the second trailer for this movie was released, referring to the multiverse, I was surprised the concept was being introduced all of a sudden, as it was attributed to the snap that the gateways to other universes had even opened in the first place. I felt this seemed a little off, as nothing in Endgame had pointed to this, but we'll come back to this. It's explained that Mysterio has already defeated 3 other elementals, but somehow they now know the final and most powerful one, the fire elemental, will be arriving soon in Prague, and this is the one Quentin was unable to prevent from destroying his Earth. Peter says he can't help, he just wants to be left alone, on top of which his class is headed to France next, and Spider-Man can't be seen in Europe as people would start to piece together his identity. Fury tells him it's okay and has someone take Peter back to his hotel. The next morning, Peter's teachers are very excited at a free upgrade they got on their trip to go to Prague instead of France. It seems Fury isn't willing to take no for an answer. While on the way to Prague, there's a funny bit where Peter is messing around with the Edith glasses and accidentally calls in a drone strike on a classmate who also likes MJ. He manages to stop it, and the scene ends with Peter looking a lot like a young Tony. Later, Peter is again intercepted by one of Fury's people, who presents him with a black suit they made for him so he will not be identified as Spider-Man. Reluctantly, he agrees to help. The fire elemental arrives, and they begin to fight it off, with Peter trying to keep his friends out of harm's way. MJ is also watching from the sidelines as a strange piece of debris flies from the battle through the air in her direction, crashing down nearby. Mysterio calls out that the elemental is getting too powerful. He draws on all of his power and flies right into it. This works, and the elemental is defeated. Peter finds Mysterio's body on the ground, and is relieved to see he is still alive. Following the battle, they decide to go for a drink, even though Peter points out he is underage. While sitting together at the bar, Peter tells Quentin about the responsibility he has inherited from Tony Stark, and that it's too much for him. He's just not ready, and it's now that he realizes Tony meant for Peter to find him a worthy successor, and that is what he was trusted to do. He tells Quentin that Tony would have liked him, at which point he orders Edith to transfer all control over to Quentin Beck. Quentin protests at first, but then says he accepts, and is honored. Peter, feeling free of this burden, says goodbye and leaves. And now comes the twist. On reflection, this reminds me in a lot of ways of the twist in Iron Man 3. The entire bar scene changes, some patrons disappearing completely, and it's revealed the entire thing was staged with holograms. Beck, now surrounded by his own people, begins to congratulate everyone for a great job on their deception. This was all a ruse to get Peter to trust him and give him control of Edith. This scene is pretty funny and over the top, in a bit of a cheesy sort of way. Everyone begins to celebrate, with Quentin giving a toast, during which he explains for no other reason than because the audience needs to know why he has done this. You see, he didn't arrive from another Earth through the multiverse. He was always from this Earth like everyone else. It turns out he was the one who designed the hologram tech that Tony Stark demonstrated to MIT at the beginning of Civil War, and he's not amused that Tony named it BARF.
Binarily Augmented Retroframing, or BARF. God, I gotta work on that acronym.
Tony apparently fired him over disagreements on the application of the tech. In fact, it turns out that everyone working with Beck are former Stark employees who for one reason or another have a grievance with Tony. Kind of funny how this further parallels the grudge Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, had against Stark in Homecoming. One of these disgruntled employees is the same scientist who Obadiah Stane dressed down in Iron Man 1 for not being able to build a miniature arc reactor like Tony. Though I'm not really certain why he held this against Tony, since it was Obadiah who was a dick to him in that instance. In any event, it was a cool little callback. Beck has been creating the illusion of the elemental attacks, and a version of himself the hero stopping them using the hologram technology, combined with the cloaked Stark drones projecting the images and using their weapons to inflict the damage the attacks seem to cause. He seems happy enough to let Peter go, but he knows Nick Fury is a real threat, as he will soon figure out his deception, so he intends to kill Fury. And if he can get Fury out of the picture, he will be seen as a hero to the world, in the power vacuum left after the loss of Iron Man. As I said before, this scene reminded me in a lot of ways of the reveal of the truth behind the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, and it's a good twist.
My name's Trevor Slattery. Don't hurt the face, I'm an actor.
I mean, as anyone who knows Spider-Man knows Mysterio to be a villain, but the trailer was showing him to be an ally, as well as all the talk of the multiverse. This was really well done, and it's even a little meta. As Beck explains, after the snap and the blip, the world is willing to accept anything. And we, the audience, were similarly ready for anything to be introduced next, moving into Phase 4 of the MCU. Meanwhile, Peter is still trying to get a chance to talk to MJ and tell her he likes her, so they go for a walk together. When Peter says he has something he wants to tell her, she guesses that he is about to tell her that he is Spider-Man. Flustered, Peter tries to deny it, with MJ saying it all makes sense, since Peter always seems to disappear whenever Spider-Man shows up, even earlier this night when the black-suited guy fought the fire elemental. It's then that she takes out of her backpack the piece of debris that she found at the fight. It turns out to be one of the hologram projectors of one of the many drones. After dropping it, it sets off a projection. Peter and MJ see a playback of earlier projections of Mysterio fighting off the various elementals. Peter realizes it was all a fake, with Mysterio staging it all. and Peter just gave him control of a very powerful weapon. Peter admits to MJ that he is Spider-Man, and they need to go now. He needs to warn Fury about Beck. Beck also soon comes to realize there's a damaged drone with a missing projector, and now with Edith under his control, he is able to see a security recording of MJ picking it up. Then he locates her and sees she is with Peter, showing him the projector. He does seem a little distraught, as he did like Peter, but now he has no choice but to kill him as well. Spider-Man catches up with Beck again, though unknowingly at first, as he thinks he's meeting with Fury, who is actually a doppelganger projection. He's then attacked by Mysterio, and we get to see some pretty cool visuals of Mysterio using his technology to fool and attack Spider-Man by constantly changing his environment around him and disorienting him. Beck then manages to fool Peter into thinking he's just watched Nick Fury shooting and killing Mysterio. Then the projection of Fury asks Peter who else he has told about Beck, and Peter, not seeing through the deception, tells him. He told MJ, Ned, and probably Ned's girlfriend knows by now. Beck, now revealing himself, tells Peter he is sorry. He didn't want to have to kill him and his friends, but now he has no choice. Beck thinks he has killed Peter when through further deception he forces Spider-Man in front of an oncoming train. Peter of course survives, and calls in help from Happy, who shows up in a Stark jet. Peter doesn't know what to do. He misses Tony. He explains everyone seems to be looking at him to be the next Iron Man, but he doesn't think he can do it. Happy tells him he's right. He isn't going to be the next Iron Man, but no one can be. He explains Tony second-guessed everything he ever did, except choosing Peter as his successor. Happy adds he doesn't think Tony would have done what he did, including sacrificing himself, if he thought Peter wouldn't be there when he was gone. It's a nice scene, and if Tony can be seen as a bit of a father figure to Peter, Happy comes off as sort of an uncle, which is kind of fitting, as he seems to have something going on with Aunt May. Happy asks him what he's going to do, and Peter realizes that he has to help his friends. Using tech on the jet, he creates a new Spidey suit and prepares to face Mysterio again, while Happy flies them to London, where the rest of his class has moved on to without him, believing Peter stayed behind in Prague to visit family. When they arrive in London, Mysterio is already faking another attack by elementals. The real Fury, also in London, seems to be developing suspicions about Beck, as all of the elementals were supposedly already defeated. Spider-Man manages to get right inside the heart of the projection of destruction and begins destroying the drones. Eventually, he gets to Beck, and seems to subdue him, standing over his body as he is wounded on the ground. However, this is another deception, and Beck is revealed to be standing right next to him with a gun leveled at Peter's head. He is about to shoot, but Peter is able to grab the gun and save himself, as he was warned by the Peter Tingle. Reclaiming the Edith glasses, he takes back control. It seems he has kept his access to the system. He deactivates all the drones, ending the attack for good. He finds MJ and finally tells her that he likes her. She admits that she likes him too, and they share a kiss. As they return home, Peter and MJ are now together, while Ned and his girlfriend have broken up. In the movie's final scene, Spider-Man takes MJ for a swing around New York. And this is where we cut to credits. But this being a Marvel movie, there's a little more. After the first part of the credits, we cut back to Spider-Man just after he has brought MJ back to street level, who seems a little shaken, saying she's never doing that again. As Peter is about to swing away, a broadcast starts and is displayed on the side of a building. In it, we see J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle. Jameson begins to talk about the menace of Spider-Man, adding he has video proof that Spider-Man murdered Quentin Beck. He goes on to add that he knows who Spider-Man is. The video seems to stop for a moment, then cuts back. Jameson says Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and he puts a picture of Peter on the screen. Peter can be heard about to swear, but the scene is cut off as we go back to credits. Now, this scene really blew me away, in part due to the reveal of Peter's secret and what this will mean for Spider-Man going forward in the MCU, but also because of Jameson, as he is played again by none other than the great J.K. Simmons, reprising the role he played to perfection in the Raimi Spider-Man movies. I always sort of wondered who would play Jameson if we ever got an MCU incarnation of the character, but I never would have guessed it would be the same actor who played him before. Now, he does have a bit of a different look, as this Jameson and J.K. Simmons have a lot less hair now. This was totally unexpected. I'm glad they brought him back, but I would have never expected them to use the same actor who played a previous incarnation of the character. It was also an interesting update to his character. Having him be an editor of a newspaper in today's world would make him seem a bit of a relic of a past age. But as a guy who has his own news show, now that's an interesting update. It reminds me of how the Spider-Man game you're seeing played here did something similar with his character. In this, he hosts his own radio show. Both are more modern takes on his character to keep him relevant. After some more credits, we move on to the second and final scene, cutting back to Nick Fury and Maria Hill in a car. But suddenly, both of them shapeshift into their true Skrull forms, and it's revealed Nick was being impersonated by Talos from Captain Marvel. The scene then cuts to the real Nick Fury sitting on a beach, but this turns out to be a projection as well. He steps out of a room and is revealed to be on what looks like a massive Skrull spaceship. The implication being Nick let Talos handle things, impersonating him while he was on vacation. While this does give an explanation as to why the Nick we saw throughout the movie seemed to be so easily fooled by Beck, it raises a lot more questions. Such as, how long has he been letting Talos impersonate him? Not to mention, what is he even doing with the Skrulls in the first place? Especially since we saw them leave Earth with Captain Marvel in the 90s at the end of her movie. I imagine these are questions we will get answers to in Captain Marvel 2, or maybe sooner. Overall, I really enjoyed the movie, though it doesn't have quite the same impact as something like Endgame, but I didn't expect it to. I'm not sure which I would rank higher, this or Homecoming. Both are good movies. I would probably give it a solid 8 out of 10. It's going to be very interesting to see where the MCU goes from here, but with the rolling of the credits for Far From Home, we close out the final chapter of Phase 3. And I'll just add, hopefully the Marvel-Sony deal for Spider-Man will keep going for many years to come. Don't screw it up, Sony. Please. Well, once again, this review took a lot longer to put together than I intended. I have to find a quicker way to do these things. I do hope you enjoyed it, however, and please don't forget to like and comment on the video with your own thoughts about the movie. Maybe even share it out with anyone who you think might enjoy it. And of course, please subscribe for more great videos in the future. For now though, this is Infinite Omega. I've been Black Deatha, and this has been a bit of a review for Spider-Man Far From Home. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. You have yourselves an amazing day. Goodbye.